In the early 1800s, Hamburg worked like a machine that never rested. Ships arrived, cargo moved, and men laboured until their arms failed. They needed food that matched the job, filling, cheap, and fast to handle. Whole cuts of meat did not fit that reality. Minced beef did. Chopped small, it cooked quicker, stretched further, and turned rough scraps into something worth eating. For sailors, the problem was time and endurance. Once a ship left the harbour, days blurred together, and meals had to survive hard schedules and limited cooking. Minced beef answered that need because it could be seasoned, shaped and cooked in ways that stayed edible even after hours of work. It became the kind of meal that travelled well through a long shift and that mattered more than elegance. Slowly, the idea attached itself to the place. People did not just eat minced beef, they ate it the Hamburg way. That label carried meaning. It pointed to a port city that fed workers who kept trade moving, and it turned a practical habit into a recognizable style. A dish began to form an identity, not from luxury or fashion, but from repetition, necessity, and a name tied to the dockside grind. By the mid-1800s, the traffic that moved through Hamburg no longer stayed in Europe. German travellers left home for work and opportunity, and they carried familiar food habits with them. On ships crossing the Atlantic, cooks still needed meals that used cheap beef efficiently and fed many people fast. Minced beef fit that job, and in American port cities, that practicality found a new audience. The first stops mattered. New York, Boston, Baltimore, and other ports already ran on sailors, dock crews, and boarding houses that served meals quickly and cheaply. German cooks and restaurant owners added a dish Americans could understand without knowing the old context. The name shifted into English. It appeared as Hamburg steak, a way to signal both the style and the place it came from. That label did more than translate a recipe. It made the dish legible on a printed menu, something a customer could order with confidence. It also separated it from other chopped meat foods by tying it to a recognizable port city name. Step by step, Hamburg steak stopped being just an immigrant habit and became a menu item in the United States, with room to evolve. By the late 1800s, Americans did not just want meat. They wanted it reliably, and they wanted it cheap. That demand matched a new kind of supply. Industrial meatpacking expanded and organized slaughtering and cutting on a scale cities had never seen. Beef arrived in standardized forms, handled by specialized workers, and sold in steady volumes. For minced beef, that consistency mattered. It turned a familiar idea into an everyday product. The other breakthrough came on rails. Ice-cooled transport moved beef farther without spoiling, and it did it on a schedule. That changed the math for city butchers and restaurant cooks. They no longer depended on local herds or uncertain deliveries. Ground beef became something they could plan around, price, and reorder. And as supply stabilized, the cost dropped. A dish that once felt tied to certain neighborhoods started showing up across town. This shift quietly widened the audience for Hamburg-style minced beef. It no longer needed a German cook nearby or a port district that remembered the old name. Any cook who could buy beef trimmings and put them through a grinder could serve something similar. In busy American cities, that meant more menus, more lunch counters, more households. The flavor stayed familiar, but its reach changed. It moved from immigrant tradition to mainstream option. In the 1890s, American cities moved faster, and eating had to keep up. Factory shifts shortened breaks, streetcars carried crowds, and workers needed food that arrived hot and disappeared quickly. Sellers responded where people already gathered. Fairs, curbside lunch wagons, and simple counter diners. The seasoned beef patty fit the moment. It cooked fast, It filled you up, and it used inexpensive ground meat without asking for time. At these stands, the patty stopped behaving like a restaurant dish. It no longer waited on a plate with knife and fork. It was griddled, salted, and served the moment it was ready, aimed at hands and hunger, not manners. Speed became the selling point. A worker could eat standing up, then move on. The hamburger began shifting from something you ordered and sat with into something you grabbed and carried forward. That change mattered because it rewired what the hamburger was for. Vendors learned to keep patties going in a steady rhythm, ready for the next customer, and that rhythm matched the new pace of the street. The hamburger became street-ready food, quick to cook, quick to sell, quick to eat. It was still just seasoned beef, but now it belonged to motion. Once it lived there, portability became the next problem to solve. Around the turn of the 1900s, the beef patty faced a simple problem. It was fast, but it was not easy. Served hot on a plate, it demanded a fork, a knife, and a place to sit. That slowed everything down. Vendors who lived on speed and volume needed a better delivery system, so they reached for the obvious tool: bread. 2 slices could turn a meal into a carryable object. Once the patty went between bread, the rules changed. Hands replaced utensils. A worker could eat while walking, while standing, even while heading back to the job. The bread also acted like a wrapper, catching juices and grease that used to end up on shirts, counters, and streets. It made the food cleaner without making it smaller, and it cut serving time to seconds, which meant a vendor could sell more, faster. That simple sandwich format did more than prevent a mess. It made the burger predictable. The patty could be cooked the same way, then finished the same way every time. Bread, meat, done. Buns followed quickly because they held together better and fit the patty with less waste. Now the hamburger worked as true street food, hot, filling, and fully portable. A messy meal had become handheld food built for movement. In the 1910s, the hamburger faced a problem it could not ignore. Ground beef scared people. It looked anonymous, it hid mistakes, and it carried the fear of bad meat. So a new kind of seller stepped in. Early burger chains that treated the burger like a product, not a one-off meal. They measured patties by weight, repeated the same seasoning, and matched them to the same bun every time. They also standardized what customers noticed first: the price and the process. A fixed low cost removed bargaining and guessing, and it made the burger feel dependable. But the real selling point was cleanliness. These chains cleaned in public, controlled their kitchens, and kept routines tight because trust mattered as much as taste. If the customer believed the meat was safe, the burger stopped being a risk and became a habit. Once the burger became repeatable, it became brandable. People no longer bought a hamburger from one cook on one corner. They bought the hamburger they already knew. A familiar bun, a familiar patty, a familiar price. Any location could promise the same result. That changed the whole business. The burger shifted from local specialty to standardized promise, and it spread faster because it felt predictable, even in a new city. In the 1930s, the hamburger met a new boss, the automobile. More Americans traveled for work and leisure, and they expected food to keep up. Diners and roadside stands adjusted fast. They shortened menus, tightened routines, and focused on items that could be cooked quickly and eaten with one hand. The burger fit perfectly, but it no longer stood alone. It became the center of a faster system built for moving customers. Drive-ins changed the logic of selling. Instead of bringing people inside, the business came to the car. That simple shift pushed the burger into a new partnership. Fries filled the other hand, a soda replaced the coffee cup and made the meal feel modern, cold and refreshing. Speed mattered, but so did predictability. Customers wanted the same taste every time, delivered quickly, without leaving the driver's seat. Teenagers became the surprise engine of this change. With access to cars and a hunger for independence, they used drive-ins as a social stop as much as a meal. Sellers noticed. They priced food to feel affordable, designed portions to feel complete, and started bundling items that naturally traveled together. The hamburger turned into a planned combo: burger, fries, soda. Not just food, an easy, repeatable routine built around the road. In the 1950s, the burger stopped being just a good idea and started becoming a system. Chains redesigned kitchens like assembly lines, so each worker repeated one small task again and again. That rhythm cut waiting time and reduced mistakes. It also meant a burger in one town tasted like a burger in the next. Consistency became the product. Speed became the promise. That promise spread because franchising spread it. A company no longer needed to own every restaurant to expand. It needed rules, training, and a name people trusted. Owners paid to copy the model, and the model rewarded obedience. Meanwhile, advertising grew louder and smarter. Burgers were sold as simple and dependable, a meal you did not have to think about. By the 1960s, the hamburger carried a new meaning. It represented modern American convenience, quick food, predictable prices, and a family stop that fit into a busy day. The burger became part of the schedule, not a special treat. And as highways, suburbs, and televisions connected the country, the hamburger acted like a shared language. Modern life tasted like a burger. From the 1970s onward, the hamburger traveled farther than any earlier form of fast food. Big chains expanded across borders, carrying the same promise they had sold at home: a familiar meal, fast, predictable, and affordable. Airports, highways, and new shopping districts helped. The burger became a shortcut for modern eating. But the moment it landed in a new country, the pressure changed. It had to fit local habits. So the burger started to bend without breaking. In some places it leaned into heat, taking chilies and spicy sauces. In others it turned sweeter, picked up teriyaki-style glazes, or swapped in local cheeses and pickles. Some markets used flatbreads or rice-based buns. Others pushed breakfast versions or smaller snack sizes. The patty stayed at the center, but everything around it shifted. That flexibility kept sales climbing. Over time, that adaptation created a new reality. The hamburger stopped being one fixed American item and became a platform, a format that different cultures used for their own flavors and rules. Global brands learned to localize, and local restaurants used the same template to compete. One idea supported countless identities. A burger in one country meant comfort through familiarity. In another, it meant novelty through reinvention. The same shape carried different meanings. By the time the hamburger reached the present day, it no longer sat in one lane. It moved upward into gourmet kitchens where chefs treated the bun and patty like fine dining, and it moved downward into value menus where price and speed decided everything. The same basic idea served two opposite promises: indulgence for some, affordability for others. That split changed expectations. People began judging burgers not just by taste, but by what they represented. Then the burger began changing what it was made of. Plant-based patties entered the mainstream, designed to mimic beef closely enough to satisfy habits built over decades. At the same time, lab-forward meat appeared as an attempt to separate a burger from the animal entirely. These options did not replace beef overnight, but they shifted the conversation. The hamburger stopped being a fixed product and became a category open to redesign by science, branding, and consumer pressure. As the choices multiplied, the arguments grew louder. Health concerns followed the burger onto menus with questions about fat, salt, portion size, and the long-term cost of everyday convenience. Labour issues rose beside them, focusing on wages, safety, and the people who kept the system running. Sustainability joined the list, measuring land, water, and emissions. The Hamburger ended up at the centre of these debates, its future rewritten far from that simple port meal that once fed sailors.